Paul is changing his tone of voice just for a moment here from verse 13 to 15. And he's actually telling them how to live a Christian life, how to live now under this new power. And I'm going to read from verse 13 to 15 to you. It says, "For brethren, you have been called unto liberty." And we've explained what liberty is. Now he goes on, he says, "Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, take heed that you be not consumed one by another." One can imagine the turmoil that there was in the church in Galatia, wherein some must have continued to believe in what Paul was saying, and then others would be taken away by these people that would come and Judaize the church in Galatia, and there must have been quarrels there. Now Paul comes and he talks about the liberty here. He says, "Brethren, you have been called unto liberty." So you've been called to a place where your identity is not in your ethnicity, where you don't try to become a Jew, where you don't try to follow the customs of Moses or any of those kind of things. And he says, "But all I want you to know is, use not your liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another." Now, we need to understand that Paul is not now backing down on what he has said from Galatians 1 up to verse 13. He's also not backing away from the logic he's expressed in Ephesians, in Colossians, in Thessalonians. The logic is expressed in Romans, especially from chapter 2 and 3 and so forth. He's not backing down now and becoming soft and saying, well, just keep these 5 laws. He's not doing that. And we need to understand that he's not kind of trying to get the church to obey some laws. He's made his point clear through the whole letter. So we cannot, the context of Galatians cannot justify for us to say that he is telling the people in verse 14 where he is saying, "For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." We cannot say he's now going and saying, listen, just obey that law now, the law of loving people. The context doesn't allow that. Paul is saying something else. What he is saying here is, he says that, remember, you've been called to liberation. And we've explained what liberation truly is in verse 1. As the liberation where we have been liberated from the fruit of the flesh. Now he goes on and he's actually just in another form saying again, which he does in most of his letters, repeats himself. He comes and he says again, that we should just not use this liberty for an occasion to the flesh. So what that means is, and this is how I see it, in the context of what the flesh would be here is boasting in the flesh, and should you then be in the flesh, you will find the fruit of the flesh manifesting in your life. So what he's saying is, don't believe in the message of grace or the gospel in such a way where you can give any opportunity for sin to use the law as an occasion to manifest fightings and bitterness and all those kind of things amongst one another. He says, but what you have to do, and this is the thing here, is that you have to use your liberty or make a use of the truth in such a way, believe upon it in such a way that you can by love serve one another. We also see now here that he's not saying that we should hate the Jews, and that he's also not saying that the other people that are going over to the other side now, that you should hate and fight them. He basically says, serve all people in love. In what love? In the faithfulness that God has expressed to all nations when he said to Abraham, when he made him a promise and said, He made a promise to Abraham and his seed, not as unto many, but as unto one, Jesus, and says, in you all nations shall be blessed. And because we now can see through the love that God has, through the faithfulness that God has towards all nations, we can now serve one another with a logic that all people are equal. All people are the same. It says here, for all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now that is so beautiful. It doesn't say that we should obey that law. It says that once we now understand what God has done and believe upon the truth that all nations is blessed in Jesus, and all nations shall have life. I believe that also now those that believe in the Lord, not just everybody in every nation that believes, the Israel of God, they shall have that resurrection, and that Israel will consist out of all nations. Meaning, it is not just a one nation thing, but an all nation thing. And the moment we start to see everybody as the same, there is not a more special people, but that all is the same, that both Jew and Gentile has died in the death of Jesus, and God has formed one new man and reconciled that man unto God. When we see that, now we are loving each other as we love ourselves. Now, for a Jew to hear, love one another as you love yourself, it would be impossible outside of the death of Christ, outside of the offense of the cross. Because the Jew would first have to believe that all nations are as special as what he is, as blessed as what he is, the same as what he is, in order to love others as what he loves himself. And the only way wherein we can love others as we love ourselves is from the logic that the old has passed away, everything has become new. No circumcision, neither uncircumcision can avail anything, but a new creation in Jesus Christ. And that is how I believe we should look at that passage, because Paul is not going to be a fool in trying to bring just one commandment, which is, well, you know, the resurrection of Jesus is not powerful enough to bring love for one another now. So the law says, just do this one law and you will fulfill the law. No, Christ has fulfilled the law. Paul would never come and use this verse in the context of one law which you need to do, which would fulfill all the laws. It says, in this the law is fulfilled, meaning you Gentiles, or you, the church in Galatia that wants to become Jews now, you want to go and fulfill the law and do what you believe the commands are. But as you believe in the gospel and you just love one another from the truth of the gospel, everything that the law wanted to take place has now taken place in you. How? Not by them obeying that command, but by Christ bringing a new life and a new logic and a truth to them. Amen. Then verse 15 said, but if you bite and devour one another, take heed that you be not consumed one of another. So it's just basically saying, this is a type and a shadow, if you want to call it like that. It's using an analogy here, like you biting one another, you're going to devour one another. What he's saying is that in your fighting, in this thing that has come because of, and this is, I know this is eisegesis that I'm doing now. I'm reading things into the text which is not literally written there. Although I do believe that it would not be completely wrong in saying that there would have been quarrels in Galatia with people that were believing what Paul was believing, and others that were now going with the Judaizers. And he's saying, don't fight with one another, don't quarrel with one another, don't fight with the Jews, don't fight with people about these things all the time. See one another in the finished work of Jesus Christ. Remember the previous passage where he has come. He says, I've got a hope for you. And I just want to read it to you. He says there, I have confidence in you through the Lord, that you will not be otherwise minded. That you will not be otherwise minded. Be of the same mind. And since you are now of this same mind, from this new mind, or the mind of Christ that's restored in you, from there, love one another and don't destroy one another's lives. I've seen that in my ministry, going around the world, ministering at places. People can so argue about the message that eventually both parties don't believe in God anymore, and they are actually then devoured by one another in their argument and in the flesh, trying to find power in I am right and you are wrong, because it's about law and who is right and who is wrong, instead about the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, there's a lot to say about that. But I just believe that what he's trying to say here, if we summarize verse 13 to 15, is simply this. Listen, guys, from this truth we can love all nations. From this truth we can love one another. Don't walk in the message of grace in such a way that you still give any place for the law. Because under the law, we don't love all people as what we love ourselves. There we love ourselves more than what we love other people. We'll rather say, you become like me for me to love you. And that's what those Jews were doing. Well, that is then Galatians 5 verse 13 to 15.